Anthropologie is a treasure trove of weird, quirky crocheted items that are so cute, but so expensive and way out of my price range. Thankfully, as an avid crocheter myself, that's not really a problem. So when I came across this granny square cardigan that not only is sold out, but even if it had been available, would have been way out of my price range, I took that as an opportunity to try and recreate it myself and make a tutorial for anybody else who wants to try making their own as well. Now, I decided that unlike a lot of other sweaters that I make, I want to spend money and do this with cotton yarn instead of just regular acrylic yarn, but cotton yarn tends to be a little bit expensive. So before I can go about making the final cardigan, I need to make a test cardigan using yarn that I don't care as much about, so that if I have to unravel anything and the yarn gets a little cruddy, that's okay. So for the test sweater, I am just using this acrylic yarn that I got at Michael's a long time ago, and it's just been sitting around waiting for me to find something to do with it. And the first thing I did was made a granny square. Now in crochet, one of the very first things you learn to do is make a granny square, and this is a really basic granny square that any beginner can make. So I went ahead and I made one granny square and measured it to figure out how many granny squares I was going to have to make in order to kind of cover my body. So once I figured out around how many granny squares I was going to need, I got to crocheting. I needed to make 96 of them, and it took a long, long time. I was crocheting on the couch, I was crocheting at the park, I was crocheting in my bed, and eventually I had all 96. Next, I had to figure out how many granny squares I needed to stitch together in order to cover my widest area. And a lot of people probably think, oh, I have some sort of sophisticated measuring technique. Like I measured my widest area and then I divided it by the width of the granny square and then figured out how many I needed from there. But really all I did was just line them up on my chest and say, that looks about right. Really sophisticated right there. So once I had an idea of how many I needed, I went and slip stitched those together. I originally only slip stitched one band together just to be sure that I had the right number. Once I was confident that this would be big enough to cover my widest area, I went ahead and crocheted the rest of them together. It took forever. And eventually I just put on a show and zoned out while I did it. What the is happening? But once I got everything stitched together, I had this basic shape. The back and the front. So the back is just one big rectangle and the front is two smaller rectangles. All right, so here I am in my natural state. I'm not wearing any makeup or anything. This is like second, third day hair. Not every curly girl can have good second day hair. So hopefully I don't look too crazy. I've got everything sewed together. So basically I just did like for the front, it was 2 granny squares thick and 6 high. In the back, it's 5 thick and 6 high, and then just 1 granny square thick on the sides to kind of bridge that gap. And that's what it's looking like so far. Now I got to do the sleeves. I have a bunch more granny squares that I can use to do the sleeves, but first I want to do a few rounds of double crochets just here so that I can close up this armpit area just a little bit more, because it's not quite enough to close up this seam right here for the 1 granny square, but also this one is too wide. So I'll probably do like 2 or 3 rows of double crochets just to kind of close this area a little bit more before I do the arms. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. So now it's mostly just going to be doing some double crochets and then kind of cobbling the granny squares for the sleeves together and then doing the border. Let's get to it. After doing a few rows of double crochets to close up that armpit area, I was ready to assemble the sleeves. But first I had to untangle a bunch of yarn because towards the end of the skein it got really tangled and I couldn't use it until I untangled it. It took a long time. After untangling it and doing a lot more crochet in various places, I was able to get the rest of it assembled. Okay, so here's the test sweater all done. I'm pretty happy with this, I think. It is a little smaller than I was hoping. I wanted it to be a bit more oversized than this.
The yarn that I'm planning on using for this final project is like a heavier weight. I think I'm going to make this out of like a cotton yarn instead of just this like, I don't think this is baby yarn, but it's like maybe a little heavier than a sport weight yarn. But so hopefully that should help kind of make it a little bit more oversized. But yeah, overall, okay. I think this is good. In terms of like making it bigger sizes and stuff, I'm trying to debate whether or not like if you want it like a large or whatever, just have it be one row larger on each square, or if I want to just have extra squares. So I'll have to think about that later. But I also ran out of like this like kind of teal and purple yarn, so I had to use like another yarn, similar yarn of a different color scheme. So this is definitely going to be like a just at home kind of cardigan.
I ultimately decided not to do these little triangle pieces at the base of the neck, and also not to do the granny squares along the sides, instead just attaching the front and back together and letting that form the sides, because those rows of double crochets that I did ended up looking really weird.
I think this could work. All right, make the final thing.
The original cardigan had a lot of different color combinations, but in order to keep this accessible and not too expensive, I decided to stick with 3 main color combinations instead, and I decided to make it out of cotton yarn, which necessitated a trip to Hobby Lobby. Once I got all the yarn that I needed, it was pretty easy to do the rest. It was just really time consuming. So once again, I had to crochet a bunch of granny squares, and that's the thing that took the longest. So I was crocheting at home, at my kitchen table, at Chick-fil-A, and once again in my car at this very flattering camera angle. Once I had all of the granny squares crocheted, it was time to actually start filming the tutorial. So I crocheted most of the granny squares and then saved the last one for the actual tutorial. So when you watch the actual tutorial, that's me crocheting the very last granny square. Again, this all took a really long time, and the parts that I wasn't filming, I just kind of put on an audiobook and listened to that while I completed this sweater. I've been doing YouTube crochet tutorials for about 9 years now, so I'm an old hat at that. Filming is pretty easy. But my least favorite part of filming is doing the intros and outros, where I actually have to be on camera and talking kind of on a script and trying not to make great big crazy eyes, which is really difficult for me. So it's a lot of me trying to set up the shot and messing with my hair and redoing things over and over and over and over and over again until I finally can cobble something together.
Thanks for watching.
Then came time to edit everything, but as you can see from this footage, instead of actually editing anything, I decided to play Stardew Valley.
So here is like the finished, like final version of this cardigan. I ended up having to make several changes to this because the yarn that I'm using is a bit heavier weight than the test one was. So like the test one, each square had 5 rows, and when I was crocheting these squares for the final one, 5 rows, it was clear was going to be way too big. And even with this 4 rows was quite a bit bigger than I was anticipating. So for the sleeves, originally, I had four squares for the sleeves, and I put 4 squares on this one, and it was like clear that it was going to be way too big. So I even had to shorten up the sleeves. Same thing with down here. The final one is 5 squares, and even then I could have stood to take off like a row of this. It's quite a little bit longer than I was hoping. So if I only had this like 3 or 4 down, that would have been fine as well. And I'm also thinking that as I wash this and wear it, it's also going to loosen up, so it's going to get even longer. So yeah, this did turn out quite a bit longer than I was anticipating. So in terms of how I'm going to do the sizing, I think I am just going to have it be through extra squares as opposed to extra rows on each square. That way it's a little easier to control how much bigger things get. But overall, I think I like this quite a bit actually. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. As soon as fall comes, I'll be wearing this a lot. Right now it is 110 degrees outside. and it's only the middle of June. Come fall, we'll wear this a lot.
So while this didn't turn out exactly the same as the original, I'm still pretty happy with it. I think having larger squares does make it a little bit more accessible for beginner crocheters. I did end up having a lot of extra squares left over, so let me know what you want to do with them. I did find this bag that seems to be made out of the same granny squares, so maybe we could try recreating this bag at some point, because I do have a lot of leftover granny squares. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to try making this cardigan yourself, you can head on over to the Studio Crafty YouTube channel and find the full tutorial there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!